What's up, dreamers? So we are going to do a little bit of a reaction to Bruce Rivers, criminal lawyer Bruce Rivers, reacting to the whole Tyrie Nichols killing and all of the details surrounding the killing of Tyrie Nichols by the Memphis police officers. I know this is a very sensitive topic, so I don't want to, be too controversial. I just want to hear what he has to say, have a little bit of discussion, and we can move on from there. Let's get right into it.
Well, let's just talk about why Tyrie Nichols was stopped.
Yes, let's.
He was stopped for a bullshit traffic violation. I don't even care if it was a flagrant traffic violation. I don't care if it was the most egregious traffic violation you've ever seen in your motherfucking life. You should not be killed because of a traffic stop.
So this is a very contentious point that I saw a lot of people in the internet space talking about when they were discussing the murder of Tyrie Nichols, right? So he was stopped because of like dangerous and reckless driving or whatever it may have been, and so people are immediately using that as a justification for what followed, for the murder of a human being, right? So they're saying he was endangering other people's lives with the way that he was driving and his complete disregard of the law. Therefore, the law should have came down on him how it did. But I believe that that is a very, very ignorant point, and I believe it also bypasses all of the justifications of what law is there for. Law is not there as this everlasting punishment that is there to kill you the moment that you break any of the rules. Law is there to dictate behavior and also serves as a punishment after rules are broken, but it is not there for some damnation of those who choose to not vouch by the laws. So I thought that was a very weird point that people jumped on when they were in defense of the Memphis police officers or just police officers in general.
It should never happen. Now we all saw the video, and I'm not going to react to the video because the video is heinous. And you watch these guys beat the shit out of this, and even if he's resisting, even if he's being a dick to these officers, which I submit to you, calling out for your mother is not being a dick to these officers. But if you are being a dick to the officers, I'm just going to go on a limb here, and I'm pro police. You know why I'm pro
Same.
police? Because they take people off the street and they feed my children because then they charge them with crimes. All part of the system, right? But I am not pro abuse of the system. I'm not a fan of over policing. I'm not a fan of abusing our citizenry. So if you look at Tyrie Nichols
Mm.
and the beating that he took, it is very reminiscent of Rodney King. Very reminiscent. My contention is this: I think we have an undereducated law of law enforcement in this country. I think law enforcement should have a 4-year degree with a minor, at least a minor in psychology. Because what do? They deal with the public. They need to know how to manage situations as opposed to manhandle situations.
I think that that's actually a very good point from Bruce Rivers there. I think that law enforcement should require a little bit more of an educational background, coupled with just an overall social awareness of like current, political, socioeconomical, all of those things combined into a complete understanding of the population that you're working with. And this is coming from someone who literally went to a criminal justice school. I saw police officers come into my classrooms from freshman year recruiting. Literally, like, you don't need your associates. As long as you have your GED or you graduated high school, you can join the force. We'll coach you up and we'll send you out there. But the problem with that is that's taking 19 or maybe even 18-year-olds out of school and putting them onto the street with populations that most of them weren't even familiar with. I mean, I went to school up in New Haven. I went to school with a lot of relatively sheltered and protected people, in West Haven, I should say. And a lot of people were, kind of where I was from the hood, or from backgrounds where they really understand the population that they would be serving. But those weren't the ones deciding to go and join the force. Those people were either coming to school for a complete different major, or they were more interested in higher level things. But the ones that they're taking and they're putting into the force, those kids, they don't really want to go to school. They didn't want to be there in the first place. So you're offering them 50, 60K to be a police officer, taking them right out of school and telling them all they need to do is go to join the boys in blue, And it sort of removes the whole aspect of them needing to have this educational background to be able to handle situations like this in a more efficient and proper way. And it also just devalues the need of a good education in a police force that is meant to be serving a population. It's just
I've heard like Reverend Al talk about they likely wouldn't have done this to a white guy. I don't know that to be true or not true. I'm
yeah.
not going to pretend like
There's
I'm more
no
educated
facts
than
or
anybody
evidence
else
to prove
on
that.
the issue of race because I'm not. But it certainly is a police thing, and I've seen it where police go like full tilt. It's them against us, and I'm sure that's the way some of these guys look at it. You know, my uncle was a cop in Rochester, Minnesota. Over 30 years, he never drew his weapon. Different time, different era. I get it. I mean, he's long since passed, and he was, and his heyday was in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. But he went 30 years without drawing his weapon. In a small town, Minnesota, I get it. So you're not going to have what you're going to have in the big city. These guys weren't drawing their weapons either. They were beating the tar out of this kid. They beat him to death. That is so ridiculous. You know, in the George Floyd case, I didn't think that Sir Tao, I think it's Tao, I didn't think that he was going to get convicted because he was, his back was to everybody, and he was directing traffic away from everybody. But he was part and parcel of the whole thing. And when you think about it, these, even if you're not part of the crowd, even if you're not part of these 5 officers who are beating the shit out of this guy, and you show up on the scene later, you know what you have? You have a duty to render aid. You have a duty to stop what is happening. You know, that's why one of the officers in the George Floyd, who was just holding his legs and told, and he said, shouldn't we turn him over? He had more of an affirmative duty as an officer to that person laying on the ground dying. And that's what these guys had. They have an affirmative duty to not do harm. You know, if this kid was sitting there, it shouldn't make their balls so fucking big that they have to get over on him. What's their job? Their job is to affect law enforcement, enforce the law. And what did he get pulled over for? Now, I haven't seen the beginning of the squad video, so I don't know whether they actually had a legitimate reason to stop him. I don't know if they had any beefs in the past, and it really doesn't matter. What matters is the length that they went to effectuate arrest. What is lost in a high-speed chase by letting somebody go? You can get him later. If you have his license plate, you can go to his house and wait. But by engaging in a high-speed chase, and in a high-speed chase is no different than what these guys did. A high-speed chase is putting other people in danger.
See, and that's another point that I think that a lot of people sort of coupled in with the justification of why the 5 or 6, Memphis police officers were justified, is that because they were chasing him, and they gave him every chance to stop, and they gave him every chance to concede and submit to the police. But I think what a lot of people forget is that when you're the criminal in the case of Tyrie, when you're the breaker of the rules, right? Not that you're innocent, not that you have like this presumption of always being right, and that law enforcement officers should always treat every situation with complete justice and fairness. But if you're already in a position where you're in a high-speed chase, you're already in a position where you're recklessly endangering the lives of others, you do run the risk of law enforcement officers harming you. You do run the risk of them taking it personally and lashing out on you. However, as a law enforcement officer, it is your duty to put all, and I know it sounds stupid, but if you're speaking to someone who is a law enforcement officer, they will know this to be true. You are burdened and tasked with such a high level of of moral duty and obligation to the citizens that you serve and protect, that yes, it does sound unfair. It does seem stupid, but that is the purpose of law enforcement. You are there to enforce the law, not to act on any public or personal opinions, not to seek out revenge or act on some basic and human need to show your assertiveness over others. You are there to enact the law. And that's where things get muddied, because those who are not highly educated or not severely and highly trained, most of the time in these heat of the moment situations, high speed chases, or people are resisting, are unable to put aside their basic human nature. And yes, it does sound dumb because we don't have robots running the law enforcement agencies. We don't have robots as our cops. But that's a whole different topic and a whole different issue that we might not even be able to accept right now. But if we did, a robot could be programmed to only withhold and uphold the law to the extent that is necessary. And it is a part of human nature to make mistakes. And I believe that this is what this was. This is a gigantic mistake on the part of the Memphis police officers who allowed their own personal opinions and emotions to overcome them and completely discard the humanity of this individual because they were just enamored in this feeling of, oh yeah, you're going to run from us? You're going to run from us? You're going to resist when all five of us had you pinned down? Well, we're going to fucking show you. And what happened as a result of it was a human life was lost. That did not need to happen whatsoever.
Huge.
Completely unnecessary.
You know, and so then we have the issue of the reports that don't reflect what happened in the video. So it's code blue, right? It's, let's just the code of silence. That we're gonna protect our own. So I mean, this is kind of a preachy episode because I'm not really telling you, giving you news and that kind of thing, but I think it's really important to highlight the fact that these officers, all five of them, killed a guy who maybe committed a misdemeanor, and called out at his final moments of life for his mama. Honestly.
Jesus Christ.
And let me tell you what these guys are going to go through in this trial. They're going to say they acted under the color of law, that they're going to have to say they reasonably feared for their life. It might be a little bit overcharged in the sense that they have to prove in this second-degree murder statute that they knew they were going to kill him. How can you come to any other conclusion when you see these men, and then none of them are little, these big burly guys, maliciously beat this young man over and over and over again? What would be lost? What would be lost by taking a step back? Nothing would be lost. Everything would be gained. He'd still be here. Tyrie would still be here. It's difficult to call your peers out when something is going down. It really is. But you have to be the difficult one. You have to do that. That's just the right thing to do. Because guess what? None of these guys are ever going to be officers again, and it would strike me odd if any of them walked the streets in the next 20 years. It might be a little bit overcharged. I don't know. And I'm only saying that just because knowing what a prosecutor has to prove. Certainly it's manslaughter. There's no question about that. And certainly it's felony murder because it's a felony assault. And is it intentional murder? We'll see if the prosecutor can prove that. But my heart goes out to the family of Tyrie Nichols. My heart goes out to the family of all these officers who made this fucking horrible decision. Because they lost their dad, they lost their husband, they lost, and he can't undo this. So keep that in mind. When you stop by the police, be careful. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Yeah, man, it's a really good It's a really good point to point out. When you are stopped by law enforcement, you do want to be very, very careful because you have to understand you're dealing with another human. That is another human being who might be having a shitty day, who might be underpaid, or he just might have been dealing with a bunch of bullshit that day. You know, he doesn't like his boss. He might not even like his job. And so, unfortunately, those are things we have to take into account because that person now has your life in their hands. I mean, they're going to be coming around with a gun. So that immediately puts you at a disadvantage. And if you are armed yourself, it puts you at an even higher one because now they have a justification for pulling their weapon or for using force more than they should be. But I don't want this to be a giant smear campaign of the police officers. I'm a police advocate, criminal justice student. I believe in law enforcement and I believe in the law. But I do believe also that humans just innately make mistakes. We are one of the most imperfect beings. And as a result, our law enforcement is tainted with this giant perception that they are all these bullies who are hired right out of school to, beat people up. And there are a lot of officers who do really, really good work to go against that narrative and to push back against that narrative. But then there are also officers like these Memphis police officers who reinforce that stereotype and make it quite clear that not all officers are trained properly, educated properly, or even proper decent human beings. So that's going to be it for this one. I know it's a bit of a dreary episode, but I'm going to need to talk about. Stay tuned for my other Tyrie Nichols video where I just sort of did my own personal rant on the situation, and we can have an open dialogue in the comments. Bye.